Welcome to the Tech Log, your weekly log entry at the intersection of technology and business. Short episodes, real conversations. Let's get underway. Welcome to episode 2 of Tech Log. We are calling this one the Data Swamp. Makes me think of Shrek every time I have written that title out this week. If you're listening to this episode, there's a good chance you have either already spent money trying to get your data AI ready, or you are about to. My name's Alexandra. I'm part of Port and Starboard, and I'm sitting across from Lisa DeNoia, who is one of our founding partners. System architecture, data, good UI, good UX, that is her wheelhouse. She's really great at those things. And we've also brought today Brittany, who is equally amazing with data, and specifically with our clients in financials, insurance, economic development spaces. But both of these ladies have an amazing eye for structuring data, cleaning up messy data, and actually getting something to come out of the data that our clients have. So with that, Lisa, I'd like to start with you today. You've been dealing with data for a really long time. And right now we're seeing a changing landscape, data and AI, and people are trying to implement AI on top of their big data systems and things storing data. In your words, what are you seeing in the landscape right now with our clients or just in the industry in general?
I think there's a lot of really interesting things going on. So the first thing is AI has given companies the ability to draw conclusions from unstructured data in a way that was previously very difficult, especially for smaller businesses, right? The ability to do things like that was expensive and time consuming. And now, they can say, like, look at my email, or look at all these documents, or, look at all these big sets of unstructured data, look for patterns, look for, information that we didn't have before in our structured databases. That can be very powerful. The other thing I'm seeing is clients using AI to analyze data sets that they've always had, but they've had limited reporting ability on that data. And what I mean by limited reporting ability is maybe the data lives in multiple systems, or maybe they just don't have a business analyst. Maybe, it's the CEO that's trying to run reports, and that might not be their skill set. And so they're able to ask AI, hey, can you look at this data and answer this question for me? I think the trade-off to that is, right now what I'm seeing is AI creating a lot of what I'll call synthetic certainty. AI is designed to give you a response confidently that answers your question. Doesn't mean it's giving you the right answer, right? The answer is only going to be as good as the context you gave it and the data that you gave it. And so I'm curious to see over the next couple weeks and months how this plays out. And as leadership teams start taking action on the conclusions that AI is drawing, are they going down the right paths, or are they going to go back and revisit the answers to some of their questions and find, hey, we didn't really define the data set for AI, and so AI gave us an answer that didn't make a lot of sense. Also, I think as we move into more of this, like these agentic workflows where people are going to try to insert AI into some of the business processes and update the systems for the people, you have all kinds of like governance and permission considerations to take there, where if the business process wasn't well defined enough for the humans, I think a lot of people are incorrectly assuming that these poorly defined business process are going to be straightened out by AI, where I think over time it may like seem like it's alleviating the problem, and then months from now you're going to find like AI just scaled your bad data, in which case then I think people are going to be coming to companies like us and saying, hey, can you help us clean up this mess? In which case we're getting really good at using AI to help us clean up, augment, and fix data. Traditionally data that's messy as a result of humans entering it incorrectly, or, inconsistent business processes. But now I think we need to get better at cleaning and augmenting data at scale. Whereas like with our smaller clients, like we weren't seeing data at that scale before. I think like anybody working in a data space now is going to have to, be getting ramped up to be able to manage data at scale.
Yeah, and I completely agree what you said, right? Those messy business processes that, might have been able to been swept under the rug or not paid too much attention to because a human being was filling in the gaps for the messy process is going to scale and become apparent as a larger issue. You had also mentioned where you're pulling data from, right? Historically, you try to almost not pull data from multiple sources, right? You want a single source of truth somewhere. That's been typically the industry standard, right? Is to create a single source of truth for your data, whether that's Salesforce or something proprietary. And we're starting to see potentially some of that change. Something with like an MCP, a model context protocol, because AI can now very easily, without having to write code or API calls and webhooks, can reach into these typically siloed systems and pull data and then make it, into one strand and into one conversation. Do you think we're going to see a shift into that?
Historically, large enterprises, if they want to be able to analyze all their data in one place, they're syncing all that data to a data lake or a data warehouse. And now they're well positioned to be able to point their AI tools at a data lake or a data warehouse and just say, this data is the source of truth, because all that source of truth logic has been built into those integrations, hopefully to say, hey, if it's out of sync, use the finance data from the ERP system, use the customer facing data from the CRM system, or the customer support data from, whatever they're using for customer service. Over the last several years, we've seen this evolution of point and click integration tools like Zapier, things like that. So a lot of smaller companies have integrations now where they don't have a single source of truth. They may just have data replicated in two systems. And so now if they're trying to connect data to multiple systems, the fields may not be named the same. There may not be, an internal data dictionary that says this field in this system is the same as this field in this system. And so if they're not prompting the AI tools with enough detail, then the AI tools are going to have to make a lot of assumptions. And then you get back into what I said, right? Synthetic certainty. It's going to give you an answer. It's rare that the AI is going to tell you it doesn't know the answer unless you specifically tell it, hey, if you need any more information or you don't know the answer, let me know that you don't know the answer. So I think as these features become more available to small businesses, and again, like you said, people are going to be able to use these agents now to perform integrations, where before they would have had to have a tool specifically for that or do custom development, to tie into APIs of different systems. Now people are going to be able to build agents that basically say, hey, take the information from this system and go retype it in this system without a human having to do it, which is totally fine. I think that's great. I think overall that's going to make business processes more effective. I think the trade-off to that is you can have a lot of in the beginning, at least, you're going to have a lot of the same, tricky data issues and like data governance issues with that you have with human beings, right? Like, which data do you want to come over? Where do you want it to come over? Is it structured the same in both systems? Or, do you have a flat table, like an intake form in one system, and you need it to come into 3 or 4 separate tables into another system? And, I think that's where a lot of this conversation around like vibe coding and people saying, like, if you don't know how to do the foundational design of these things, you're going to get yourself in trouble. I don't know if you're going to get yourself in trouble. You got to be careful, right? And I think a lot of people are, before they're able to go live with some of the stuff like that, they're going to realize that they're not really getting what they want, and they'll ask, they'll start reaching out for help. But yeah, I mean, it just kind of creates, I don't know, all kinds of interesting situations. Brittany, what do you think?
Well, yeah, because it's not going to replace the need for clean data. Now you're just going to take the dirty data that was centralized in one system, and those same problems are going to follow you into other systems if you don't clean up the data before you start, connecting all of these tools. I do think it's going to make it a lot easier to connect to data in different places, but the clean data problem is still going to underlie all of that. So,
Brittany, you deal a lot with sharing data across orgs that only want to share certain aspects of data, but they want these efficiencies and they want these automations just to make the experience better for our clients and for their data. What are you seeing in that space, especially where there's maybe some more intricacies involved than just saying, pull me these reports, and you're dealing with, privacy settings and security and things like that?
Yeah, I think, with these shared databases where there's certain data that you want to keep, closer to the vest, and there's other data that you can share and collaborate on, it's still, the data can still become outdated very quickly. I was reading a study that said nearly a quarter of your CRM records become outdated every 12 months. So it's still all going back to, being able to trust your data. One thing I've seen at different levels of success is companies will implement a data enrichment tool because they realize, they're humans on the team, have other things to work on. So they're using these tools to update and enrich their data. But then they're finding it's harder for them to trust that data because the enrichment doesn't always get everything correct. And so now they're in even more of a conundrum where they have all this data and now they don't know what data to trust, what data they need to, get rid of and start over with. So I think that's been a big challenge lately as organizations start to see these, maybe AI-driven enrichment tools that sound like, a great time saver, but are actually causing them, more headaches and more manual cleanup in the long run.
What was the term we use all the time? Garbage in, garbage out. And, garbage in, what will your agent spit out is maybe a new 2026 way of saying that. What are some protocols? What are some considerations a business owner, a CTO, somebody should be thinking through right now before they let AI touch their data? What are some key things you should be stopping and thinking about?
I think business continuity is very important. So any type of agent automation, I think you start small and you start with things that are not going to disrupt your business if they go wrong. Small errors can become big errors very quickly when you automate them. And one thing I also think is important, a lot of companies that are using SaaS tools, if you look deep down in the terms and conditions, are they backing your data up? Do you have a way to back your data up? If you want to start getting an agent into your finance system to do your bookkeeping and something gets messed up, do you have a plan for reversing that? How frequently are you taking a look at how that's going? And if something goes wrong and your data gets corrupted, where thousands of records get updated all at one time and you didn't want them updated, do you have a backup? What's your I think backups, listen, we've been doing this for 10 years and I've been doing it longer than that, because before we had a consulting company, I had a real job where I was doing a lot of data updates, and I guess this is still a real job, but you know what I mean. Sorry, I'm having flashbacks when we started this company. My mom's like, when are you going to get a real job where you have a 401k? And I was like, and I remember when we hired the first person, I was like, now we have a 401k. Anyway, gotta have health insurance. I would, I take a data backup every time we run an update, right? We always take a backup. I've seen clients get into really bad situations where, another consultant or somebody on their team went in, they ran a big data update, they didn't take a backup. We take a backup and we keep a log of every big data update that we do in our own systems and our client systems. That way, if anybody ever comes back and they're like, why are all these records like this? This has your name on it. What did you do? I can go, oh, on this date, we ran this data update and we impacted this many thousands of records. And this is what we updated. And this was the justification for why we did it. Oh, you don't want it like that? Cool. I still have the success file from what I did. So I have the IDs of all the records I updated and I have the backup. So I can roll it back. I can partially roll it back. I can, if some time has passed, I can look at the data now and see if I can, there's any number of things I can do as long as I have a trail of what happened. And now my concern as a business owner would be, I don't want to let a whole bunch of agents loose on my system, just like I wouldn't hire a bunch of brand new employees and just give them access to go in and start updating everything all at once. I think, people really need to be taking the time to document the exact instructions of like, what are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? What are your permissions? What's the governance? What are the sources that they're working from? Is it simply a call with the customer? Here's an example of what real-time customer-involved data enrichment could look like. A customer service agent, whether that's a person or an automated, a robot, is on a call with a customer, and the whatever the system is they're working in is able to surface a list of important fields that are either blank or haven't been filled in the past couple of years, past couple of months. They can validate the data. They can ask, hey, can you validate this is still your address? This is your phone number. Oh, it's not your phone number. And they don't have to ask every question every time, right? If the customer has validated their address within the last 2 weeks, you don't need to repeat it back to them again, probably. And so that could become more customized, right? We could get away from these automated calls where we're having to repeat the same information for the customer over and over. But, I think you could also go into vast unstructured data like your company's emails, Slack channels, all kinds of other information where you might have information about these customers with dates associated with it. I think then you have a governance, issue with that, where you have to say, well, what's okay for the AI to look at and what's not okay, because then you could be looking at potentially sensitive information, right? An example would be, we've had clients before that say, I want all my emails synced into Salesforce so I can search them all in Salesforce. And then what happens is, the HR department, all their emails got synced into Salesforce, and then everybody's job offers were in there, and they were able to see all kinds of sensitive information that they shouldn't have had access to. And, that's an example where it exists with human beings, and these same problems are going to exist at scale.
But at the same time, if the AI is only getting access to the data that's in your CRM, they're losing a big part of the story, right? They're not seeing the context from the Slack messages and the emails or the Zoom transcripts or anything else. So they're giving you feedback or instructions, but they don't have the full story to work with.
AI can reach into these systems, and it's really fast, right? Seconds. There is no more sitting there with Zapier anymore. And, that might even be such a benefit to companies. They could be having a good portion of their sales conversations happening in Slack. And I think Salesforce knows this, right? Or they could be having a good portion of their conversations even happening on text messages, in their voicemails, in their notes and their Notion, and in a Google Doc, right? Now, all of a sudden, you're able to really have that true 360 view, depending on what an agent has access to or what they're permitting, which shows the importance of having someone on a team or a consultant or somebody who can help, I think, direct where a company is going to head, because that's a lot of permission for technology, for robots, for AI to get into. In your opinion, do you think the messy data that people see, this data swamp, is that a human problem or a technical problem? How would you go about solving it?
So I would say both. I think it originates as a human problem, and then when AI tries to scale it, it becomes more of a technical problem. As far as a solution, you really can't hire your way out of bad data or tool your way out of bad data. You really have to start with redesigning how data is going to enter your system and making clean data the path of least resistance, whether it's AI or humans that are responsible for putting in or maintaining that data. You've got to make it easy for the data to be input, or you're never going to get as much as you need for the full context.
Yeah. Lisa, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I think it starts as a human problem. I think you can't tool your way out of it. I do think you can define your way out of it. There's a lot of, especially in systems that are customizable, we see this a lot in Salesforce. There's a number of CRM systems on the market where you can add fields, you can add objects and tables, you can add all these things, and that's great. And I think because of that, there's a few things that happen, right? There's fields that are really important to the company. There's also fields that get added sort of as like a UI nice to have, right? Oh, this team is doing this and they want to have a field to type this in, right? One of our clients, they have a custom object in Salesforce and it has a roll up dollar amount, and it has a typed in dollar amount, and then it also has a notes field, and their finance team just loves to also type the dollar amount into the notes field. They just really love to. They don't have to. I've told them over and over again that they don't have to. They're typing it in two fields and then it's rolling up in another field, but they just really love typing it in there. So you know what? Fine. Have at it. Type it in there. That's okay. Sometimes they're doing it because they're like adding three things together. Fine. I think the important thing is we're not going to say, hey, you can't have that field anymore because the value in that field doesn't always match the value in the other field. I don't really care. It's there because they asked for it. It's not required. It doesn't matter. I think the thing that's important is I never, ever, ever want an AI tool to look at that field, right? The field exists because a person wanted to have it. They had strong feelings about it. I never want AI to look at it. There's other fields that got added and maybe they never got updated on records that existed prior to the field being added. That's okay. As long as you have the context, this field is always blank before the state. And then you say, well, if we're reporting on this field, we only want to look at records that are this date or older, or maybe we want to use AI to go back and derive the old values, right? It just takes some planning. And I think the third thing that happens of why fields get added to a system is just technical debt. It's not that they got added at some point in time for some reason, and then they never got removed when they stopped being used. And the reason why is because technology projects cost money, and sometimes it's not worth spending money on taking away fields or features that people aren't using anymore. We just put in parentheses deprecated after the field name. Fine, if it says deprecated, AI should know not to use it, but we don't know that for a fact. And so maybe we need to go in and clean those things up, or maybe again we just need to give clarity and say, don't ever analyze a field that says deprecated. Don't ever, look at fields that are not required. It's a combination of both. This is what's important. This is what we never want to look at. These are things that you could look at if you want to, but they're inconsistent. And so let us know if you can derive some value out of that. But we don't want to base our findings off of these fields, right? Treat these fields as almost like a hybrid of structured and unstructured data. So I think you can define your way out of your data problems if you don't want to go clean up your data. I also think you can use AI plus smart people with company context and cultural information to go fill out incomplete data, populate, augment your data that you have. I think it becomes a technical problem only when you try to start making decisions off of it. But I think 90% a human problem and 10%.
Yeah. And I loved what you mentioned about define. I remember maybe 2 or 3 years ago, got into this client's org, and they had built an entire CRM's functionality within the lead object. They hadn't touched any other object in the entire org. Nothing. No contacts, no accounts, no opportunities, nothing custom. If you had plugged AI into that and just turned on the switch, it was like, do your thing, it would have produced a mess. But if you give it the definition and that amazing human context that those individuals had who had built that, then all of a sudden you saw they built a beautiful system within the leads object. It just wasn't standard, it wasn't normal, but it worked for them, and it had been working for them for almost 20 years, which I think highlights a really important. AI is a wonderful tool, and it's wonderful technology that's going to be really powerful and really change how people work, but it is a tool. It is not a miracle. It's not going to fix every problem. And so using that with proper context and implementing it in the right way, then it'll be really powerful and it'll get your business somewhere. You can't software your way out of a data problem. We've seen even our own clients spend a lot of money on AI infrastructure only to realize they've built an expensive mirror that just reflects their own internal mess back at them. So if you really want to be productive and get your money's worth, get great ROI out of these tools, take a look at that data. It's not just a headache. It can become an actual problem if you aren't paying attention to it.
I saw this survey by Validity, and it was saying that almost half of companies lose 10% of their annual revenue from bad data. So just
really
put some numbers to the problem. But
yeah. How many times do we see humans even finagling the data so much in their day-to-day job just to make even a piece of new technology or current technology work right? Well, thank you both for chatting about data. I know that's not the most exciting conversation, but for some people listening, that's probably something keeping them up at night, believe it or not. I know it's something that occasionally keeps us up at night. Lisa has also, with the team, built a wonderful solution for data utilizing AI, properly called Hortensia. If you'd like to find out more information about that, just drop us a line. We'd also be happy to show you that solution as well. We will see you in episode 3. Thanks for joining us today.
We love to talk technology and business. Learn more about Port and Starboard or connect with us in the show notes. Fair winds until next time.